energy, frequency, and vibration. This is what we also suggest. And so a wave in physics, a wave is an oscillation accompanied by a transfer of energy that travels through a medium. Imagine yourself throwing a stone to the water, and that creates this ripples and the waves, and you get that cross section, and you will find a sine wave on the surface. And there are two specific forces that I want to focus on now: the centrifugal and centripetal forces. Now, one of them tends to implode towards center, and the other one explodes. It's a centrifugal force. So these are two forces that are present in a toroidal field, which is a plasma field. And especially the implosive the quality of that force is observable in whirlpools and black holes as well.
Just to suggest a way to think about that, biology always struggled with the question, why every protein we ever saw that was alive, the helix went one way only. But if you know that the plus minus DC polarity of lightning, one is more centripetal than the other, now you know why one direction of the lightning, polar direction, being more centripetal, could drive the codons together instead of apart, imploding instead of exploding. So you see, connecting the idea of implosion versus explosion with plus and minus charge is profound. Actually, electronegativity, we think, is generally centripetal.
Yeah, so as said, you can see both qualities of those forces are present on a toroidal field. Now, we can divide the curvature on a toroidal field as positive and negative. Now, the inner section of the torus donut is a negative curvature, and the outer part is a positive curvature. Now, especially the inner part of that torus on both sides, as we see in the picture here, is also called a catenoid. And this is extremely important to understand the physics that we are talking here, because in physics, the catenoid was used to describe the function of transduction in wormholes for energy, like higher dimensional energy, to influx into our 4D space-time with its unique topology. That's why it's very important to understand the catenoid.
The catenoid basically refers to the curvature that creates that vortex. And remember, it is conventional physics that everything is made of vortex in wormholes. That's old information. The new information is that the golden ratio is what enables that vortex to be centripetal because of the constructive adding and multiplying waves. And that's the cause of implosion and gravity and life and consciousness.
Yeah, basically, that geometry holds the specific path of charge flow on that topology, also known as non-destructive charge collapse.
Exactly. And all the physicists agree non-destructive charge collapse is the solution to basically everything, including the unified field. And it appears that all the psychologists agree that perfected charge collapse is the cause of consciousness. It's just that none of them seems to know what causes charge to collapse. And the answer is two words: golden ratio.
Right. So Earth's magnetic field, also known as the geomagnetic field, has a toroidal magnetic field extending from the Earth's interior out into space. And this magnetic field is not only a toroid, but it's a twistor, where toroidal fields are recursively created within each other and became scale invariant, as we have seen in this research paper that we went over, how they were linking the consciousness in the universe are all linked, entangled to each other like a toroidal domain donut.
Yes, and in fact, we're saying that entanglement perfected is the problem golden ratio phase conjugation solves. Physics knows that entanglement is what creates action at a distance. Now we know that golden ratio enables the longitudinal, which is the action at a distance solution. And that implosion is charge collapse.
Yes, and this is also another reference to this previous research paper, that the the electromagnetic activity of the sun is directly related with the brain field, and this is also called magnetoreception, and this is another link to this entanglement, perfect embedding of consciousness.
And we know that birds do it, but it turns out humans can too.
And I would like to mention about Glenn Ryan here, because he has this beautiful article called Biological Effects of Quantum Fields and Their Role in the Natural Healing Process, 1998. So Glenn simply explains the toroidal fields in relation to biofields around our bodies, free energy devices, and healing processes. In a nutshell, Ryan used his experimental evidence as the basis for a model which introduces the concept of a biofield composed of at least 3 layers comprising of force fields, potential fields, and quantum fields embedded within one another like a twistor. And the model further proposes that, this is very important, the healing information originates from a higher dimensional source and is transformed into biologically usable electromagnetic energy as it propagates through the layers of the biofields, through the twistor. And also, twistors or torus magnetic fields are being emitted by the heart. Dan Winter, who is credited in the literature for inventing the word heart coherence, emphasizes that compression is learned when emotional pictures inside our hearts become so self-similar or fractal that they become a fractal attractor, sucking the outside in, therefore creating attraction towards others who have similar emotions in their hearts. And the recursive turning inside out becomes the implosion, which is the electrical rush associated with feeling and the love of attraction. Go ahead, Dan.
Which is compassion. That's beautiful. Thank you for repeating. That's gorgeous. And just to say, if you make a picture inside yourself of what someone else might be feeling about outside yourself, if the picture you made inside is self-similar to their feelings outside, that feeling implodes, and I would turn myself inside out for you, darling. That's the physics of compassion. And the power spectrum of the EKG, realheartcoherence.com, proves how that works.
Yes. And the electrical model of the heart's increasingly harmonic inclusive fractality makes perfect compression and makes perfect compassion as electrically identical, self-similar.
You know, in the biophysics of the heart literature, the When Time Breaks Down, the famous book, depicts the origin of the heart's voltage with exactly similar pictures. It just turns out that that's measurable in the EKG, meaning you can actually teach compassion by measuring the EKG become coherent between 2 people. It's beautiful, realheartcoherence.com.
Right. And this gives new insight into why the healthy heart is a fractal heart.
Which is not a new idea. That was Harry Goldberger, actually.
Right. Now, this is self-re-entry in space and time. It basically shows the 3-dimensional axis and distribution. And if you notice the spiral on a donut, you will see that it will rotate around the toroidal field 3 times and come back to its starting point. So you can imagine this like consciousness or perception going over the toroidal field and coming back to its starting point and remembering or experiencing itself. This is how consciousness or perception happens at all scales in the universe. And these are the 3 axes of rotational spin for self-sustaining plasma intelligence: gravity, perception, consciousness. Now, our point is The reason why plasma fields chose to manifest themselves in this profound toroidal form is because they had to find a self-sustaining, self-organizing recursive geometry to optimize their survival energy. And we know from hydrodynamics that the 3 axes of rotational spin allows the only self-sustaining shape. This is why it's important to understand those 3 axes and how it helps the toroidal field or the toroidal spiral shapes.
You've basically got 3 axes of spin superposed, and the torus is the only way to do that. Another way of saying that if you're a smoker, the only thing you can make is smoke rings. But the point would be made is that's self-organizing golden spiral on the torus. If you see the shadows of that indexed by tetra is Hebrew and Sanskrit. That's what at that link, goldenmean.info/DNA ring, because non-destructive self-reentry is the origin of not just mass, but it's the origin of consciousness.